Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to JHU Grad Camp 2021, a two-day virtual event aimed to help you gain insights and skills needed to launch your graduate school career. I'm Karen Mardock, one of the life design educators in the Life Design Lab, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, Dr. Smiti Nathan and Nadine Goldberg. In the Life Design Lab, we guide Homewood undergraduates and master's students as they design their way forward. Whether you're one of our current students, an alum, or a current or incoming graduate student, we're really glad you're here. Over the next 2 days, you'll have the opportunity to choose from 15 panel discussions or workshops that each address key questions about considering, applying to, or thriving in grad school. We hope you'll find the event informative and useful. In addition to the panels, during the lunch hour each day, undergraduates are also invited to drop in for a quick chat with a representative from our Life Design Lab or from the Office of Pre-Professional Advising, which supports undergraduate students who are interested in pre-health and pre-law pathways.
All of today's sessions and tomorrow's sessions are going to take place right here on the Brazen Event platform, and you're welcome to move between different sessions whenever you'd like by returning to the event lobby. You can also find a full agenda for Grad Camp all on one page on our website at bit.ly/JHU gradcampinfo. We're also going to be using social media throughout the event, and we'd encourage you to do the same. So if you'd like to join in the conversation, you can use our hashtag JHU GradCamp 2021 on any posts. Before we kick off our session, we'd like to take a moment to thank some of the wonderful campus partners who have made this program possible. First, to Dr. Roshni Rao of the Futures Office, thank you for sharing your advice throughout the planning process and for connecting us with so many of the terrific graduate students who are going to be speaking throughout this boot camp. On that note, we'd also like to extend our deepest thanks to all of the faculty and staff members, graduate students, alumni, and amazing Life Design Lab colleagues who are going to be sharing their experiences and expertise with all of us over the next 2 days. This event really would not be possible without you. And now we would like to turn things over to our colleague, Dr. Smiti Nathan. Her presentation is going to lay the foundation for all of us for this boot camp with an overview of the graduate application process.
Welcome, everyone. We're so excited to have you here. Just bear with me 1 minute as I start sharing my screen. That's the wrong screen. Let's do this one. Just get situated here. Excellent. So for today's presentation, this is really just an orientation to get you situated with what we're going to be doing at Grad Camp today and tomorrow. Now, there are certain topics, especially certain foundational things that come to applying to graduate school that our sessions might not cover. So that's what I'm going to cover here today, so we're all on the same page. Now, I will say this presentation likely won't take until the 10:50 mark. So if you have questions, feel free to pop them into the discussion, which should be on your right-hand side if you're in a web browser. And I'll be sure to answer them as best I can at the end of the presentation, but feel free to start using that discussion as we go. So just really quickly, we are part of the Life Design Lab, as my colleagues had mentioned, and we use what's called a life design approach when we're thinking of programming and creating programs and events and contents for students. So the life design approach, really briefly, is based in design thinking, and that kind of approach is laid out on the left side of the page. And the life design approach that we use is really stemmed from Bill Burnett and Dave Evans and their work with designing your life based out of Stanford University. So we're not going to go into that in detail right now, but just so you know, our approach to this entire boot camp is based on this. And we really want you to get an idea of what's coherent for your life. So we're not going to be very prescriptive and tell you what you need to do or what you have to do. In addition to reflecting on who you are, what you do, and what you believe, we want to give you key information and knowledge and perspectives and a network to enable you to go out there and do the research, get the information, and make a decision that is right for you at the right time. So just to summarize really quickly, when we're talking about the life design approach, we can say it in 4 easy steps. That's get curious, talk to people, try stuff, and tell your story. So I would say our grad camp today and tomorrow touches on all those aspects in a different way. So I'm going to get into the nuts and bolts of applying right now. And this is applying if you're like an undergrad, master's, or anyone applying to different programs. I'm going to give kind of a holistic overview. So there, when we're thinking about categorizations of different types of programs in the US, predominantly, we can think of these in categories as like postdoc certificates. This is really for like medical school or graduate school if you eventually want to go on to these programs. And these typically are 1 to 2 years. And the reason or common reasons why people might engage in a postdoc certificate is maybe they want to have a career change. So whatever they did in undergrad doesn't really line up with maybe medical school or the graduate school they want to pursue. Maybe they want to improve their academics and also tap into a support network that maybe wasn't there when they were an undergrad. Now, there are a variety of different types of master's program out there, and the types I listed are just a selection. The master's programs usually last from 1 to 2 years, and common reasons why people engage in a master's degree is perhaps they want to pursue a career change or honestly promotion. Perhaps they want to increase knowledge and then also to network as well. This is quite common in MBA programs, which is a Master's of Business Administration. And then finally, the other major category, which I know many of you are here today to get more information, is around doctoral programs. So this could be PhD programs. This also could be MD programs or JD programs, which is common for law. And now the degree length can really vary, but we're looking at a minimum of like 3 to 5 years. So for example, in like the social sciences and humanities, sometimes your degree could take anywhere from like 7 to 9 years realistically. Now, why would someone go for a doctoral degree? Perhaps it's required for their profession, and maybe they also want to engage deeply in their work in a certain field, and this is typically through research. Now, there are definitely more degree types out there and different types of programs that are definitely worth exploring, but these are like typically the common ones you'll encounter. So this is a very extensive chart laying out the application process and different application components. If you use that QR code at the bottom of the page, it will take you to a blog post that outlines this graphic and some more of the information that I'll mention today. So don't feel like you have to like write all of this down, or if you need to see it in a more readable format, like feel free to like go to that blog post. Now, as I mentioned before, there are different types of programs. So on the top of this chart, you'll see different categories. So academic programs, graduate certificate programs, various professional degrees, business programs, law programs, medical or dental school programs too. Now, again, with this chart, like things might be changing. So this is just to get you started in terms of key functional information. So overall, deadlines do vary a bit, but we're seeing a lot of deadlines for programs happening in the fall. And like some programs, like graduate certificate programs, have rolling deadlines, as with medical or dental school. But deadlines are really important to figure out in the beginning, so you know how to kind of craft your like timeline and application process. In terms of a centralized application, which is quite common in terms of applying for undergraduate institutions, for certain programs, it's not really common at all. And we really see this more for law programs and medical and dental school programs. Now, typically these applications are done digitally, and there is usually some type of application form or questionnaire. And my biggest advice with this is do not neglect this. Make sure to look over this questionnaire ahead of time and don't do this at the last minute, because there might be some questions in there that might take some thought to help your application. Now, across the board, official transcripts are requested. Sometimes programs allow you to upload a digital copy of an official transcript. Increasingly, I'm seeing less and less programs allow for unofficial transcripts to be uploaded. And typically only when you gain admission in certain programs do they require you to like send them via mail to the program, but this can vary. So again, this is something you want to check ahead of time. So I'm going to move on to some other components, and like you'll see this little flashlight icon that I used in this slide, and those indicate parts of the application process that are going to be discussed in detail in other sessions, and I'll be able to tell you more about that a bit later. But before moving on to talking about we're not going to move on to talk about entrance exams, because this is a major question that comes up. So I'm only going to touch on the GRE, and that's due to we have other resources at Hopkins to talk about like MCATs and the LSATs, but the GRE is a question that commonly comes up. So one question you should definitely ask yourself is, should I even take the GRE? And it is a common entrance exam, especially for doctoral programs. However, a lot of programs are waiving GREs due to COVID or eliminating them altogether for equity purposes. So before you spend time, money, and energy on these exams, I highly recommend checking into both the department and program and school and see what the requirements are. Again, if you go to that QR code, the blog post that's linked to actually has a crowdsourced list of programs that are not requiring the GRE and getting status updates about other programs. Now, a second question that's commonly asked is, when should I take the GRE? And so the short answer is really no later than 2 months before your first deadline. But overall, it's a 3 to 4 month process at least. So you want to create a timeline based on your earliest deadline to receive scores. And that's key because some schools have deadlines for certain parts of your application. So for example, your application form and all the documents that you might need to be created could, for example, be due December 1st, but your GRE scores and maybe letter of recommendations might have a due date of December 5th. So again, the timelines and the deadlines are really important to like sort out for yourself. And then you want to buffer in time to at least take one retake. Maybe you don't need this, and that's great. But if you end up needing a retake, no matter who you are, you have to wait 21 days before you retake the exam. So you want to buffer this in. So when you're creating a timeline, again, you want to work backwards from your earliest deadline. Think about how much time you need to study and definitely account for a retake. And then another thing to note that these scores are valid for 5 years. So if you feel like, you're in like test taking mode and you think you're going to apply to graduate school in like the next couple of years, it could definitely be worth spending some time over summer or over a break to study and take the GRE. Now, some programs require writing samples, and we do have the Writing Center at Johns Hopkins University who will be giving a presentation later today on personal statements, and I'm sure you could touch base with them in terms of editing your writing samples. But there's just 3 notes that I wanted to make sure that everyone was aware of. Now, when programs ask for a writing sample, it's typically a lengthy piece of writing that is relevant to your intended field. So you want to make sure the topic you're sending in for your writing sample is relevant in some way to the program you're applying to. So for example, if you're applying to an anthropology program, you probably wouldn't want to include a piece of writing for maybe like a biology class, if you have to write a term paper there. But if that term paper touches on anthropological topics or your intended field or focus that you want to go into, then that would make it more of a pertinent and relevant writing sample. Now, a senior thesis or a term paper is a good starting point for that. Now, one thing that a lot of applicants might not be aware of is that you can totally edit this document. Like, so if you had a term paper or senior thesis and you got feedback on it to improve it, definitely take that feedback in and edit that document before you send it in. Now, application fees are really common when applying to graduate school, and this is in addition to fees for entrance exams, fees you might pay for official transcripts, or even centralized application. Now, the one thing to note here is that there's typically an application fee imposed by each school and sometimes program itself. And increasingly, there are options for fee waivers, but you have to really be proactive on this one. So you want to check if there are fee waivers by checking like the university department and maybe your individual group, lab, or advisor's website. And you can definitely like inquire by email directly to see if there are fee waivers. Some programs actually have like a no questions asked policy. Some programs have like a need-based policy. So I think it can get quite costly as you apply to schools. So it's definitely worth checking what type of fee waivers are out there. So again, these are the different application components that are quite common across the board for various like programs and degrees. But again, I encourage you, this is really a starting point to help you orient your research. So throughout this graduate school boot camp over the next 2 days, there's going to be a lot of sessions to help you navigate, explore, and like reflect on this process. So while I gave you a bit of applying 101, there are actually fantastic programs throughout these like next 2 days that are going to give you more in-depth information about certain topics. And I'm going to go over them briefly. So the next session right after this one, starting at 11 a.m. is with Dr. Carlos Medina, and he's going to walk through a holistic process in terms of thinking about the question, where should I apply? Also happening today, and this is a major question we get asked by a lot of students, is a presentation by our Writing Center director, Dr. Robert Tinkle, on creating a compelling personal statement. Closing out today, we're going to have another session on what goes through a graduate admissions panel's mind. And so this is a really interesting perspective because oftentimes people don't know that they can actually, ask certain questions and they're allowed to do so. So I definitely encourage you to check that one out. And then tomorrow, we're going to have a session on how to engage with faculty during the application process. And this can be really useful, especially when you're requesting letters of recommendation. And so you're going to hear from various faculty members about their perspective and some best practices there. So we also have some program for maybe our undergraduate students who have already been admitted to programs, or our other students and people in the Hopkins universe who've been admitted to programs, and they want to know how to thrive in graduate school once you're there. So we definitely have some programs, many today, that address that topic. So if you're curious about how to have a great first year as a graduate student, that will be a concurrent session that is also going to start at 11 today. And we have some great perspectives on that, including various graduate students and Dr. Jackie Stone from our Center for Health, Education, and Wellbeing. Then I will be hosting a workshop on creating a CV, which is very different than a resume and typically an essential professional document, especially in doctoral programs. Then mentorship is going to be discussed, not just broadly, but really like functional information on how to find mentors while in grad school. And I definitely encourage you to check that out. And then closing today, we're going to have a great session by like 3 experts on taking control of your professional development while in grad school. And this is a crucial topic that often gets overlooked. So we have great panelists with a wealth of experience in different areas who's going to talk about that today. So we also have 2 amazing kind of lunchtime sessions happening that are completely made up of graduate student panelists who are going to offer their perspectives and give you real talk about certain topics that are important, but sometimes under discussed. So for today, we're going to be talking about how to bring your identities to graduate school. And tomorrow we'll be talking about navigating graduate school as an international student. So again, I encourage you to check those out. So a big thing to keep in mind throughout this graduate school boot camp is we are definitely not pushing you to go to graduate school. We want to equip you with options to make a choice that is right for you. And so in doing that, we've created some panels to help you explore some options that might not be talked about as broadly. So for example, tomorrow we have a session on making the most of your gap year. Everyone's path to graduate school is not the same, and it's certainly not always linear. And like gap years can be, or bridge years as they're often called as well, can be powerful experiences to help you, refine maybe what you want to do a bit more in graduate school or figure out if it's even right for you. Now, maybe you're really excited about grad school and want to look at some options abroad. We have a great panel with like some partners from the DAAD, which is a German organization, and Campus France USA about pursuing graduate school in Europe. But Dr. Louise Lassalle will also touch on like graduate school options in Europe a bit broadly. And then tomorrow as well, we are talking about how do I not pay for graduate school? So there are certain expenses that might come up, and we have a bunch of great panelists with different perspectives to give you some great information on that. And then finally, while a lot of people might pursue a doctoral degree, especially with an academic career path in mind, we want to be really upfront that, the academic job market is a bit up and down, to put it kindly, but also there's a lot of things you can do with a doctoral degree or a graduate degree that is outside of academia. So we wanted to close our graduate school boot camp with a discussion of that as well. So finally, again, our goal for you during these next 2 days is to really explore in terms of figuring out like how to reflect. It's really important that you're equipped with like certain like baseline knowledge, and you have a toolkit to pull from in terms of a network, experiences to try out. And our hope is that you gain a better sense of how to get to that why, and then ultimately make a decision that can work for you. So thank you for listening. I'm going to stop presenting right now, and I'm going to check the discussion to see if there are any questions. All right, so we don't have any questions. Oh, well, no, I'm seeing questions, sorry. So Marlene has asked, like, will these sessions be recorded and available later? Yes, so they might not be available immediately after, but we are planning to make them available to anyone in the Hopkins universe. We have a question. Okay, that's been answered. Yes, again, these sessions will be recorded. Okay, and then we got some links to the blog post. That's great. All right. So Nadine and Karen, really quick, were there any questions that you saw that we should address so everyone can hear? Okay, I don't believe so. Okay, so we're going to end the session so you have some time to yourself to take a look at the program, plan out your day, and then we have 2 sessions coming up at 11. Again, one session will be on how to apply, and then the second session will be on how to have a great first year as a graduate student. So I'll make sure to stay in here for a minute in case anyone has any quick questions, but we hope to see you at one of the sessions at 11. Thank you.